How we doing, everybody? Today we're starting a new project. We're going to make 4 interior sliding barn doors. These are sort of decorative doors to cover up some closet spaces. As you can see, there's going to be 2 vertical members, 3 horizontal members, and then some panel material in the middle to fill out the entire door. Over here, I've got my cut list, all the parts that I'm going to need for this project. And over here we got our stack of lumber. My goal today is to rough cut out all the pieces that I'm going to need for this project. That way I have them in front of me and I know I have enough lumber before I proceed to the next step. The interesting thing about this project is that the person who asked me to make it requested that I leave all the mill marks on it from the Sawyer. Over here where you have all these bandsaw marks from the mill, typically we'd run that through the planer to clean it up and make it look all pretty, but they want a rustic appearance on this, and so we're going to leave all of those marks. This is going to present some challenges for me because I'm not going to be able to flatten things out and make it all parallel and perfect. We're going to be working with some wood that is going to have some natural taper to it. And yeah, so I've already talked to him about the fact that it might not turn out perfectly square when we're done, and he's fine with that. So we're going to do our best. A lot of these boards are reasonably straight, so I'm confident our end result's going to turn out pretty good, but this is a new experience for me, so we're all going to be learning about this together. Alright, we've got everything cut up. We've even got a little bit of extra. And the last project was the same type of material, so there's a little bit of that too. So if I screw something up horribly, there's a chance for redemption. So in this project, the idea was to keep everything as rough sawn as possible, but the edges of these boards are so out of square that I've had to joint one edge of them, and now I'm going to rip them on both sides so that I leave table saw marks on both sides and kind of hopefully keep some of that rough looking appearance. But because we're working with rough lumber and I don't want to really do any sanding at the end of it, right now I'm using blue tape to indicate which face I put against the fence of the joiner. That's going to let me know which side of this board is like sort of squarer to the edge, because the other side might be way out of whack. So I picked the flattest side, and I'm going to use that as my reference surface throughout the project. And when I put this together, it's not going to go together perfectly, just because of all the boards being a little bit weird, but that's just sort of the nature of the project and what the customer asked. So I'm going to label all the jointed, or the top faces, the reference faces, with blue tape, so that as I move forward, I remember which side I used on the joiner and which face I put face down on the table saw. Here I'm planing just one side of the interior panels. This is going to result in getting the thickness I need while still leaving one rough face. That rough face will face out into the room, And since these are closet doors, the back of them isn't going to be as important, and so we can keep that planed face towards the wall and no one will ever really see it. Here I'm cutting out the dados for the horizontal and vertical members of the door. I've made the dado just barely larger than the panel, so the panel's going to fit in. It's not going to fit in loosely, but because of a certain amount of warp in the boards, I think it's going to be a good middle ground for making the panels fit snug, but not having to fight them in later. Using a cross-cut sled and a stop block, I'm creating all the tenons for the horizontal members of the door. These tenons will be the same thickness as the panels and fit into the same groove on the vertical member. The stop block is necessary in this instance because the part I'm making is so short, I can't use the fence and the cross-cut sled together. So you see that I've got the clamp there holding that block in place to make sure that all the tenons are the same length. These three cross pieces I just cut, we've got the one side of the tenon done on all of them. Now they vary in thickness a little bit, so the depth of the tenon on the back is going to need to be a little bit different. So I'm going to start at the least amount that I need to remove, and then either go from there by adjusting the dado up slightly to remove more material, or doing it by hand with a chisel and a hand plane. This first joint looks pretty promising. Pretty darn good fit. Don't want it to be too tight here, risk blowing out the sides a little bit. Bottom's out pretty nicely too, that's about as good as I can hope for. And let's see that too, let's see how we're doing over here. Twisted on this floor, so we'll have to take it out of the other side. Not the best scenario for fitting this up, but and that one came out a little short, so maybe I have to trim that tenon down a little shorter, but as far as the fit goes, it's pretty nice. So we'll call that good enough for now. Right now I'm laying out where all the holes for plugs are going to go. This is tough on this project because we can't sand any pencil marks away. We have to leave it rough. So you can see here, I made a couple of Sharpie marks. The way I'm doing it, got a marking gauge set for the depth in that I want to go. And I've got my tape out here, and I'm simply getting in here with the marking gauge, making a mark at a precise location, and then marking it with the Sharpie. The hole is going to be 3/8 of an inch in diameter, so all the Sharpie mark is going to disappear when we cut it out. But other than that, I don't want to leave any mark. Otherwise, I won't be able to sand it, and it'll just be there, and I'll be stuck with it. I'm about to drill these holes for the dowels. I've made this little spacer to fit inside of my dado, just to help support it as I'm drilling and prevent tear out on the inside, so that the fit up will still be really nice. Here we're joining and ripping all of the interior panels to the exact same width. Here we're cross-cutting the interior panels to length. You'll notice that I take a trim cut on one end, like that, and then I'll use the fence for the other end. That way I know that both ends are absolutely square. You'll notice when I'm making this cut that there's a pretty long distance between the blade and the fence. The longer that distance is when you're making a crosscut on the crosscut sled, the sketchier it gets. So I wouldn't want you to make a cut like that in class. I would have you use the miter saw instead. I don't have a miter saw that's ready to go, so I'm stuck with the crosscut sled. Just know that that's maybe not always best practice. Alright, I've test fit all my tenons, so now I'm going to assemble a door. Here we go. Here I'm drilling through the tenons so that I can put pegs through. I held off on drilling these until I've got this fit exactly where I want it. Then when I drill the holes, I know that I'm going to have a nice tight fit. Now I'm breaking the edges with a block plane. This will make all the edges safe to touch in case there was a sharp edge. On the interior panel corners where the plane won't quite reach, I'll finish that up with a chisel. Here's the final product. You'll notice when I put it together I didn't use any glue. Those pegs going through the dados and the tenons are going to do a great job of holding it together, so I'm not really worried about using glue in addition to that. The other advantage that we have by not using glue, if this door was damaged in any way, we could drift the pegs out and take it apart and replace, anything that got damaged and put it back together. So I suppose it gives us a bit of an advantage in that sense. Until the next video, thanks.